Hey, and welcome back to the Fully Booked Photographer podcast. And we're delighted to be back again. We were just talking today, we're gone over 30 episodes. Wow. That's what we call the big C, consistency. We do that on the Fully Booked Photographer all the time. We teach our members to be consistently fully booked. I think, Jonathan, you're hosting today, right?
I am hosting today because this always fascinates me. And the fact that we have some amazing photographers and photography entrepreneurs on the podcast, our lovely mentors. And we have someone who has been in the photography industry as a vendor for many years. I won't reveal how many because it might show his age. But it's always fascinated me. Like, you hear photographers all the time talk about themselves and their artwork. And, they're always looking to get better at creating their artwork. And they also tell me that they struggle finding clients. So what I want to know by the end of this podcast is, do people actually desire photography? But first, Janine, you're a photographer. You run a successful photography business. You have a 4-figure average sale, which many photographers pine about having. You photograph children's portraits and, some family portraits to fill in any gaps. You're also growing your business. So you have staff, you're hiring more staff, and you're always fully booked. So tell me, Janine, I want to know 2 things. 1, what business are you actually in? And do your clients actually desire photography?
That's a great question, Jonathan. And I know you guys think that you know my answer to this. I know the 3 of you are sitting there thinking, I know what she's going to say. Because she loves Disney and she's going to say she's in like the happy magic making, fun making business. And it's funny because I knew you were going to ask me this question and I was thinking about this. And here's the thing. And I fully believe this. And this is part of my why. And it's part of what drives me is I'm in the remember when business. And I'm in the for parents to remember when Brad was 1 and smashed his cake and laughed and ate it and dove his face into it, and now he's 16 and learning to drive. I'm in the remember when Jonathan first read Harry Potter and fell in love with the book series, and then we took him in for his wizarding portraits at the studio because he fell in love and was expecting to get his letter to wizarding school when he turned 11. I'm in the, remember when Ronan graduated from high school and we did his senior portraits, and now he's graduating from college, and I can't believe those 4 years went by so fast. So I'm in the remember when business. And it's remember when every Christmas. Remember when the spring. Remember what it is that the child was into. Remember the birthdays. Remember when Grandma and Grandpa came to visit and we came in for a family portrait. And so for me, the connection that people desire to their past is what I do. And the connection that parents want to have to remember what their children were like every stage is what I provide. Now, I do it with happiness and I do it with smiles and I do it with fun because that's just my personality. And I love to capture all those smiles for families and I love to create those connections for them. But if you were to ask me to name my business, I'm in the remember when business. And the photography, I'm not done. The photography is what I do to give them that remember when experience.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If you're in the remember when business, what does that people do? What does that people do? What does that do for people now in the present? Because you can't live in the past.
You're right. You can't, but you can connect to it. And you can connect to it when you look through your photographs. And photography has this incredible ability to bring us back instantly to a moment. There's a couple of things that can do that. Music can do it. Smells can do it. Photography can do it. And it allows us to remember and connect with those times in our past that we otherwise would forget. And so while we live in our present and we love the present and we live in the moment and we're curious about our future, we want to connect to the nostalgicness of our past. And that's what we do in the studio. And that's the memories that we're providing people with the photography that we create and the experience that we give families to have together with their kids.
So why do they desire it?
Why do people desire to be connected to their past?
Yes. What does it do for them in the present?
I think it ties us together. I think it allows us to give us a foundation. It allows us to know where we came from and know who you are. I'll give you an example of the absence of it. So I recently have started working with a lot of foster kids. And the foster parents are one of the toughest things, and they know this. And the kids go to therapists because of this. When a lot of kids come out of foster care at the age of 18, guess what they don't have? Photographs of their childhood. And it's why so many foster kids have issues going into adulthood. They have not, like, you don't realize how much your past and being able to connect to it and remember the different things help you to live in the present, be okay with who you are, be confident in yourself and in your family and your loved ones and who you are. And so when you don't have the absence of it, kind of tells you a little bit about why it's so important.
So let me ask you this. If you have had, let's go 20 years into the future, and you have some photographs that you created of you and Aaron and James, and you're looking at those photographs and they're connecting you to the past and they're eliciting all of these emotions. What's it doing for you in that moment? How does it make you feel?
It gives you I do it now. I don't have to go 20 years in the future. Right now, Erin and I, she's a teenage girl. We go through a lot of struggles that mom and daughters do. And I will stare at her pictures on the wall, Jonathan, and it reminds me that we're a family and that I'm her mother. She's my daughter. And while we might fight or we have angst about something right now, that will never change. And we've had those happy moments in the past. We will have happy moments now. We will have happy moments again in the future, even though right now we might be struggling with something. And so it gives you that, God, I remember when she smiled that way. I'll see that smile again. That's what it does.
So Janine, what it actually does is it's reminding you of the love that you have for each other and that you're a family.
Yeah, it's a connection. It's a family tie.
All right, so before I ask Brad a similar question, Ronan or Brad, do you have any questions for Janine about what business she thinks she's in? Or any comments on what she said?
I think that it's also about a celebration of life in terms of the journey of life you've been on. Because I don't know if you've ever asked this, right? But I've asked people at various stages of their life, like I've asked my parents, like, would you like to be starting again today? And they tell me no. And I've never met anyone yet who's actually said, yes, I'd love to be starting again today. The only caveat I've heard is one that I and others have used, which was, I'd love to start again today if I have the knowledge that I have today, which is not the same answer because it's not possible. So I think there's a link here to that celebration of life's journey and looking back on, it's like the idea in the gap and the gain, right? You're celebrating the gain of life, that everybody has progressed through life and are hopefully happy, right? But it's a journey along the way with its ups and its downs and its challenges and its celebrations and all that. And photography is a visual art. So as Janine said, it's a visual trigger to remember that journey and celebrate that journey and reflect on that journey.
Absolutely. So hopefully it doesn't interfere too much. But while we're recording this podcast, our neighbours have decided to cut their grass. So hopefully you can't hear that. But Brad, you're not a photographer, but you own a photography business. Your wife, Ruth, does some photography in it. Your dad, Stan, is a photographer, and your mum worked in the business too. So you've seen it all because you were a high volume studio doing 30 plus sessions a week. And you've been that high volume studio where your average sale was, £400, £500. In 2019, you completely flipped that and changed your business, and you reduced your volume and increased your average sale to £1,500 and £2,000. And your photography business has been so successful. You've extracted the profits and you own over 20 properties for the property empire that you're building. So you've seen and done it all in the photography world. But tell me this, first question, what business are you actually in?
I'm in property, Jonathan. That's the business I'm in. That is what drives me, what motivates me, what gets me up. I'm in wealth generation and I'm in property. But I inherited a job. I inherited a job from my parents, a job that my wife now does, and a job that I still do in two aspects, because I now teach other people to do the same job that I love, and I still do it for my own studio, is that I help transform people's lives. And that's the job I do. And I say job because I don't view my photographic business or my photographic studio as a business. I wouldn't classify it as a business. I would classify it as a job that I own, a job that I've inherited, and a job that I love. Property is my business.
So Brad, you said that you're in the business of transforming people's lives. So let me ask you this. That's a really interesting answer for a photography business. Do your clients actually desire photography?
See, that's an interesting question, Jonathan. And I've paused because I said my job, not my business, Jonathan. My job is transforming people's lives. And that's a job that I share with my parents and my wonderful wife. But I'm pausing because years ago, before I had a slight epiphany about purpose and about problems and about why people actually came to my studio, I did think people desired photography. So I did think people were coming in because they wanted photographs. And the main reason they were wanting those photographs was to capture and hold memories. I thought that was the main driver for 99% of the clients coming into the studio. It wasn't through a significant amount of exposure and natural problem solving that I discovered that the vast majority of clients don't come in for that. They don't desire portraits, they desire something deeper. So everybody, it's surface level. Everybody has a surface level desire for photography, but there's a reason, there's a much bigger reason why that's driving them to have it. And for my business, my epiphany was photographing boudoir, was understanding, it was the epiphany that my parents had at the same time, was understanding the women that were coming into the studio, the struggles and challenges the women had, because, you know, if you hear people struggling from abusive relationships, or cancer survivors, you hear that once or twice, you think it's a coincidence, but when that's a running theme of clients that we were attracting, or that clients that wanted to come to the studio, and you start to think, well, you know, why is it just women who've had abusive relationships or have had cancer that want to have portraits of themselves on the wall? And they don't. They want something more. They want to have a transformation, that they want to recapture that old them. They want to build the confidence. They want to feel empowered. And that's the problem that we're ultimately solving and helping them move towards. But having that epiphany at the same time my parents did enabled us to shift our business.
So you just said something important. So you mentioned that some of the women coming in, let's take boudoir as the first example, because that's primarily what you photograph. So you said that the women that come into your studio for boudoir have some challenges in life, so some problems, right? So they're not feeling confident, or they're, you know, come out of an abusive relationship, and they desire something more. They desire to feel confident, to feel empowered. So that's the transformation you help them achieve. So you're taking their problem of, you know, not feeling good about themselves, and through your photography, you're helping them achieve the emotional state that they want to feel. Did I get that right?
Yeah, but it's not through photography. It's through delivering a transformational experience. It's through caring about somebody enough to have conversations with them, to get to know them at a far deeper level than just booking them in to take some quick snaps. It's understanding who they are, who's important to them, and what they want to achieve out of this experience. And then ultimately delivering that to them as an experience. And then the photography just acts as a reminder of them having the experience and who they are now, who they want to be now. Got
it. So if I was being cynical, right, and I was listening to this podcast, and yeah, I was a photographer out there, and I didn't photograph boudoir, but I was a pet photographer, or a family photographer, a children's photographer. If I was a pet photographer, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's all well and good for boudoir. Yeah, women want to feel more confident. Great. Yeah, that's fine for boudoir, but I don't do boudoir. What about pets and families? Is it different?
Just the same. No. You'll have slight nuances in the problems that your clients will face, or their desire they want to have, but it's ultimately the same thing. I'm a dog owner. My parents are dog owners. If I was a photographer targeting my parents, I know that through having a conversation with my father, I'd quickly understand that Buddy, my parents' dog, my dog, saved my dad's life. And my dad would want to capture that and immortalize that, so that not only would that experience aid my father in overcoming the grief that he was feeling when he got the dog, and finally, he never finally closed the lid on grief, but helping him move past that, but at the same time being able to transform it so that he can look at his artwork and knows that Buddy loves him, which sounds a very strange thing, that you have artwork of your dog to show that, to prove to yourself that your dog loves you. But I think that's a common fear for most dog owners, that we love our dogs unconditionally and we hope that they love us. But yeah, it's just the same. It's just the problems and nuances are different.
Okay, so Ronan, you're not a photographer. You're a business owner. You've owned multiple 7-figure brands with over 35 employees. You've operated in multiple industries, but you have been a vendor in the photography industry since 1989, so 25 years. You've spoken at many photography conventions and exhibitions across UK, Ireland, USA. You're also a current board of directors member of PPA, which is the Professional Photographers of America, which has over 36,000 photographers as members. You're speaking at Imaging USA. You've spoken there before. You've mentored photographers. You've helped them, create a profitable photography business. So safe to say you know the industry inside out. That's the point I wanted to make. But tell me this, what do people who book in for photographic experiences actually desire, in your opinion? That's my first question.
I don't know, because I think it could be any number of things depending on the person. What I can tell you is that most people, regardless of whether it's photography or whether it's I need to hire a carpenter or a plumber, it's to solve a problem of some kind or a challenge of some kind or to better their life in some way. Because most people, when they consider anything, they're either trying to move towards pleasure or away from pain, or both. So it doesn't matter what the medium is for that. It's about what's the problem. But if you ask me, so who desires photography? I don't think anybody does. People desire what it will do for them. So if we even take a simple example of a commercial photographer, right? So what's their business? They're in the marketing business, aren't they? Because they are photographing products or people or whatever that might be to market a business or to help sell goods for somebody. That's what they're in, right? It's, as Janine said, it's a visual cue to get a reaction from somebody. If I'm in the only people I can think of who you could argue are in, who desire photography as a business, and they don't really, but somebody who's teaching somebody how to be a better photographer in the art and science of photography, you could argue that they need to produce quality photographs that another photographer looks at and says, I want to learn how to do that. That's the only argument I can make for that. And even with that, are they really in the business of photography? Really, they're not. They're in the business of helping others be better at the craft of taking a photograph along the elements of the art and science of photography. I know this sounds terrible being on the PPA board, but I'm not a photographer, but I think there's 12 elements that PPA judge a photograph on. Janine will correct me if I'm wrong. But is it 12 elements, Janine, or is it?
I don't enter print competition, so I don't know.
Okay. But, so they're teaching for those 12 elements, that you can create a photograph that gets a high enough score to mirror it as a quality image. So this is a really long answer to your question, I know, but I'm an Irishman, so you'll have to forgive me. So if you then take the photographer who deals with consumers, because we talked about commercial, we've talked about training, do consumers desire photography? And I would say no, they desire the result that photograph produces and feelings to them. If you want a global definition of what they want, that photograph has to make them feel a certain way. And that feeling can be anything, can't it? It can be like in Brad's instance, a lot of his clients do boudoir because they want to gain confidence. A lot of Janine's clients want to, document strong word, but to provide their children an experience where through life they grow through those experiences as people, and then together they can celebrate that today. They can celebrate it tomorrow. They can celebrate it forever, as Janine says, looking back, right? And what that means. So even in those tough times, or when things are a little bit tense, or, your kid has annoyed you, or whatever it is, that photograph still reminds them and you of that, lasting love. No matter what happens, we'll be there for each other. So, but I think the answer you're probably trying to get to is, do photographers spend too much time trying to craft their art rather than being focused on their client? I think that's what you're really asking and what you're trying to get to. But I'm open to correction on that. But if that's what you're asking, my short answer is yes.
Well, I'm not specifically asking that. I'm just exploring, people's views on it, seeing as we're all so close to the industry and live in the industry day in, day out. But I want to tell a story just about... So for me, right, I've never, ever, ever desired photography. Never. I've never. We went years, as you say, we were the cobbler's son. No shoes. We had no photography in the house, right? And now we do. And it took me a long time to realize this, but I still don't desire photography at all. That sounds horrible as a photography educator. I don't desire photography, but recently, it was my birthday last Tuesday. I was 31. And Brad and his wonderful wife Ruth were over for it. And for my birthday, they didn't have to get me a present, but they bought me a diamond folio box from 3XM filled with images from Brad and Ruth's wedding that I was at. And they also had a frame that was, apparently you can't get anymore, and Brad's dad Stan put it together with Brad's speech in it that we were mentioning, and a photo of Brad, Ruth and myself in the image. And we also have images now of the family up. And what they do when I see them is they're a constant reminder of the special relationships I have with the important people in my life. Jesus, why am I getting emotional? This is what photography is all about. Oh, God. And when we were at Future Photography, there was a presentation going on, and, there was a story told. And it made me think of... I was sitting beside you, Ronan, and it made me think of our relationship and the little things that we do that we don't really understand or know. So, for example, sometimes when we're going to bed, I'll give Dad a hug, and he'll lean on my shoulder, and he'll pretend to be asleep and start snoring and start rocking forward and knocking me over, and I have to push him back. And at that moment, I thought, Jesus, I would love a photograph of that, because every day it would remind me of our love for each other. And for me, that is what we're about as an industry. So, geez, I didn't intend to get emotional. My question to everyone here is, how do we help photographers empower people to desire photography? Where would you start?
I would start with creating a process to discover what you've just told us with every potential client we have.
Such the owl in you, Ronan. Straight to a process. No, but you are correct. People have to experience that. You have to. That was wonderful, Jono. It truly was. And you have to know the emotion attached to it, because it can't just be a photograph. It can't just be a photograph just to have a photograph's sake. It has to have some meaning. And it takes somebody who actually gives a shit to find out what that meaning is, and to find out those stories, to find out your true relationship with your dad, or with me and my wonderful wife, and then present that and capture it.
And here's what I also say, Jonathan. I would say that a photographer who discovered that and captured that for you, even if that photograph was out of focus, you still love it, treasure it forever, and want it forever.
And I believe Jonathan used the word remember.
Yeah, it helps me remember in the moment.
So even when I'm slagging you off, Jonathan, and I'm not showing you any empathy, as I do apparently every day for most of the day, and even the team here have said that 99% of my empathy, 99.999% of my empathy, or lack of empathy, they see when I'm referring to you or talking to you. Despite all of that, right, that when I make you feel crap because I'm not showing any empathy to you, that photograph would remind you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, always. And one of the challenges I see is that, even for some of our members, if they're writing ad copy for, family portrait experience, they're talking about, they use lines like, so we have a certain formula, ad copy formula, and it starts with, asking a compelling yes question or an implied yes question. It then deals with a problem. And I've seen a couple of people in their problem say, do you miss not having photos of your dog or of your family? Is your wall empty? Do you need to update your family portrait? And that's not the problem. That's not the problem, in my opinion.
It's the same way, in fairness, I think commercial photographers get this more than anybody because most of them know the business they're in. They know they're in the marketing business. So they would never say, do you need more commercial photography? They wouldn't. They just don't do that. Their pitch will be, do you need help with your marketing? That'll be their pitch. But for some reason, particularly in portrait photography, we're confused about this, and I'm not sure exactly the reason why. Maybe Janine and Brad have a better insight into this than I do, because I'm not a photographer. But they seem to be. Sorry, not everybody, right? But a large majority seem to be focused on that it's all about the photography and therefore them. It's as if it's an extension of their ego.
Well, it's interesting, Ronan, that you say that, because I think if any photographer who thinks that isn't being honest with themselves as they look at some of their past sessions. It's happened to me. I'll have a session that was photography-wise horrible. Horrible. Not my best work. Something went wrong. An image was out of focus, whatever. The lighting wasn't ideal. The kids weren't ideal. But the parents loved everything because they loved the experience and they wanted those images because it helped them remind whatever it was that was happening, that experience, the togetherness. They didn't care. They wanted those portraits. And I've had the flip side. Session was perfect. Images outstanding. Could probably enter into a print competition if I did that sort of thing. And they would be critiqued as ideal photographs. The parents don't buy anything. It's not the quality of that photograph. It's whatever emotions they're experiencing, whatever you've done with them in that session, whatever problem, like you guys have said, that you have solved, whatever milestone it is that you've captured, however they have connected to that session and that experience, and the photographs are the end result of it. That's what ultimately matters. And I think every photographer could look back at their sessions in the past and think of stories like that. And that's one way that they can answer to themselves. Is it the photography or is it the experience? Is it the connection? What is it that ultimately my client is desiring?
And Janine, it's like the story of, our nightly hug with Ronan where he falls asleep. Your photographs from that session might be capturing a special, situation that happens on a daily basis that helps them elicit that memory and that emotional connection to the moment.
Yeah. I've had sessions where the kids are basically hanging upside down because the parents can't get them to stop. They're crying and they're screaming and their parents are like, that's my life. I want that, And so it's that feeling. And we do want to remember, we do want to have that feeling, and people desire it. We're human. We desire connection. We desire togetherness. We're tribal people. We want to be in our tribes, and so like Brad was right. Every photography business is going to have a slight nuance because we all have different clients. We all have different genres that we're in. We all have different ideal client avatars, but each of those ideal client avatars has a reason that they want to connect and a thing that they want to remember and a thing that they want to experience. And we have to figure that out as photographers and or as business owners, job owners, whatever. And that is what we have to communicate to our client. The photography is the means by which we do it. It's not what we do. And I'll give another good example that's not even in our industry, like Facebook, for example. What business are they in? I mean, every day I'll get a Facebook memory. And I'm like, oh my God, look at James when he was babbling, when he was like 1 year old, and I'll sit and I'll watch the video, or when our pictures came up from imaging, just different things that connects you right back to that moment. So what business is Facebook in, And it's just interesting, like these connections, these visual triggers, what does it do for us as people? And that's what photographers, they really need to get into that. It's not a lack of photography. Very rarely is it a lack of photography that people are looking for. What is it? What is that connect? What emotion is it that your specific client is wanting? That's why for me, it's the remember when, that connection, that celebration. Parents who want to be able to remember their children throughout life, through that child's journey. For Brad, it's the transformational experiences. We all have something. And I just implore photographers to figure that out, because if they think that it's just my amazing photography is going to bring people in and people want my photography, I think that's why we see so many of our members struggle, because they can't find the right words to communicate. They can't find the right words to market, and they can't figure out how to connect to their clients because they're trying to connect through it the wrong way.
And Jonathan, I was sitting, I think it was last night with your mum, and we were sitting on our two chairs and we were looking at the photography of our family, right? The ones that you refer to, like the house is full of photography of our family, right? And this year, Erin has moved out, Freya has moved out. And I just turned to your mum and said, isn't it amazing to see the family? Imagine the challenge you would have to bring all the family together now today to get that done. We managed to get all that done literally 12 months before Erin moved out. If we'd left it, like I said, it's never, now they've moved out, even though they're our daughters and all that, it's still not the same as when we were all here in the house as a family. It's not the same. It's different. It doesn't mean we love them any differently. We don't, but the dynamics have changed. It's like what Janine talked about, that life journey. Dave moved to the next stage of their journey. But it's amazing just to be able to see that photography and just remember when we were all here together as a family, and we were, living together every single day of every moment, it's not about the photograph. I'm not saying the art and science photography is not important. Of course it's important, but you've got to remember that it's not, if that's your sole focus, well, then you're never going to really connect with your client. You're really never going to make a difference. And you're certainly not going to bring those clients back over and over again.
So I'm very conscious of the time.
Whoa. I'll throw an opinion at you just before you wrap this up, Jonathan. Just to loop back to Ronan's original point, because I've been sat here contemplating like I do. And we have a group chat, and it's called Difference Makers, because that's the difference we make, or that's what we're trying to achieve to the photographic industry as a whole. And ultimately, that's a better job title and description for what we do in the studio and what a lot of our members do in their studios as difference makers, not photographers. I'm going to say a bit of a controversial opinion here, but I would say that if you are a photographer who became a photographer because you have a love for photographing and light and creating imagery, wonderful. Don't try and make a business out of it. Do it as a hobby, get a job. But if you have a desire to change somebody's life and impact them and help them with whatever problem they face, then you can use that love of photography to achieve that. Because I've seen it countless times, and my studio operated with the mindset of being a photographic studio, not making difference, and we were successful for many, many years. But I don't think with the way the market's going, and not just the market, but the way AI is, and all the entire world's changing, that model of business that we ran, I don't think will be around in 5 to 10 years' time. I think if you want to use photography to earn income from, you have to make a difference to people's lives. And if you have no interest in that, get a job, do it as a hobby.
All right, so I want to before we wrap this up, I just do want to say something. So, how do we empower people to desire photography? Well, for me, it's understanding what business you're actually in. It's understanding, you need to understand who your ideal client is so that you know what problem they have and what problem you can help them solve. So what transformation can you help them achieve? And by doing that, you are empowering them to invest in that artwork, because that's the catalyst and the trigger, and for them remembering how you helped transform their lives. That's what you need to do. You will never be truly successful and fulfilled until you can understand that, because without understanding that, you can't write ad copy that attracts those people. So then you can have conversations and book them in and photograph them and, help them achieve that transformation, and they invest with you.
All right, I think that brings this podcast to an end. So if you guys want to get fully booked, all you have to do is click the button below and join the 30-day challenge, where we will walk you through, this mentor team will walk you through how to become a difference maker. I actually think I prefer that. It's funny that that's the title of the new book, The Successful Photographer, A Difference Maker's Plan. I think we should just rename photographers difference makers. That might help solve the problem. And if you like this podcast, or even if you didn't like it, and if you disagree with us, that's okay too. Just comment below with your disagreement. We'd love to have a debate with you. We'd love to have you on maybe on this podcast if you want to debate a different opinion. We would love to do that. But either way, just make sure you press the subscribe button. And from all of us this week, from me, goodbye. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.